Hello my students, class 9. Today is the last day of the chapter 1, that is the Harappan civilization. Okay. Meanwhile, I discuss the important question answer. Today is the end of the chapter. Now this chapter is very important. It is the beginning chapter and very important in the sense that it is the earliest and the richest civilization in the whole world. Meanwhile, today I want to give you a revision of the chapter. First thing is the sources of the civilization, then period of the civilization, then urban planning. The most remarkable feature of this civilization is that is the urban planning. What? The urban planning. In my book it is page number B6, the significant features of that the Harappan people had trade relations with other countries. Now, the trade and commerce. The Harappan had the Harappan had the Harappan had trade and commerce. The Harappan had commercial relations with southern and eastern India. My students, all of you can follow it. Kashmir and countries of Central Asia. Now, many evidences have been found which reveal that trade was carried on with Egypt and Crete. In the Indus cities, objects of Sumerian origins are found. It indicates that there were trade relations between these countries. Now, next para. Trade was carried on both by land and sea routes. So, my students, you will try to understand that through the land and sea routes, and as the civilization developed by the side of the sea, it was easy in that sense to carry on the trade relations with the other countries. So, in the Indus cities, objects of Sumerian origins are found. It indicates that there were trade relations between these countries. Next, trade was carried on both by land and sea routes. The representation of a mastless ship on a seal suggests the popularity of the sea routes. Now, then, next, describe the famous sculpture in metal which was found among the ruins of the city of Mohenjo-daro. So the next question is, describe the famous sculpture in metal which was found among the ruins of the city of Mohenjo-daro. Now, number 1, sculpture in metal. The most outstanding work in metal is the bronze figure of a dancing girl with her right hand on her hip in a dancing posture. So, next question, that is the last question of the chapter. Describe the famous sculpture in metal which was found among the ruins of the city of Mohenjo-daro. Answer: sculpture in metal. The most outstanding work in metal is the bronze figure of a dancing girl with her right hand on her hip in a dancing posture. Now, you have to very carefully then study the description of the girl. I have written the description of the girl from your book. You go through it. Next is sculpture in stone. You have to go through two stone statues, very famous two stone statues. Then sculpture in terracotta, sculpture in terracotta. Now the next is importance of seals as the sources of Mohenjo-daro civilization. The seals play very important role. So the importance of seals, various types of the seals, and then you have to study excuse me, the various types of the seals. And I mention you, my students, before that in the civilization we cannot decipher the script. So what happened? We cannot get any evidence, I mean any information from the literary work. Many things are written, but we cannot find out what is the real meaning of those writings. Okay, my students. So, what happened then, my students? Now, the second chapter, that is the early Vedic civilization. This chapter finished. The second chapter, very important, the early Vedic civilization. The early Vedic civilization is in direct contrast to the Harappan civilization. Harappan civilization, which was urban in character, the civilization of early Vedic age was agrarian, that is rural. The early Vedic age is said to have ended around 1000 BC. Now, my students, this Vedic civilization, we may divide it into two parts: early Vedic civilization and the latter Vedic civilization. Now, the sources to reconstruct early Vedic civilization. Before that, some important thing I want to mention you. In India, the Aryans lived in Sapta Sindhu region for a long time. This region was comprised of 5 rivers of Punjab: Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Beas and Satluj, and the river Indus and the river Saraswati. The Sapta Sindhu region is believed to be the first permanent home of the Aryans, It was here that the hymns of Rig Veda was composed. So it was here where near the region of Sapta Sindhu the hymns of Rig Veda was composed. However, reference has been made to Jamuna also. In Rig Veda, reference of Sapta Sindhu as well as Amuna was mentioned. The Ganga is mentioned only twice in Rig Veda. In Rig Veda, we come across the mention of Ganga twice. Now, sources to reconstruct early Vedic civilization. The Vedic literature of the Aryans is divided into two broad categories, that is early Vedic literature and the latter Vedic literature. The Rig Veda, the first of the Vedas, is probably the earliest literary work that humanity possessed. So many times question come, my students, which was the earliest Veda? The Rig Veda, the first of the Vedas, is the Probably earliest literally what? So the question is, which was the earliest literally what? The answer will be the Rig Veda was the earliest literally what that humanity possesses. Why it is so important? It contains hymns in praise of different gods and goddesses like Indra, Varuna and Agni. It consists of 1028 hymns divided into 10 mandalas or books. It pertains to period from 1500 BC to 1000 BC. Now, so these are so important, okay? Now, how do Vedic hymns enable us to reconstruct early Vedic civilization? Now, Indra is the most favorite god. Indra is the why the Vedic hymns so important to reconstruct early Vedic civilization. Indra is the most favorite god of the Rig Vedic Aryans. He is considered to be the rain god. Indra is considered as the rain god. Clouds and rainfall naturally played a significant role in their economic life. Their economy was predominantly an agricultural one, as during the Vedic age the economy was predominantly mainly agriculture, so the people had to depend on rainfall. So people had to worship the cloud, the rain god. In the Rig Veda, the god Indra is called the Purandar, which means the breaker of forts. The Aryans often invoked his help to destroy the enemies. Indra is called Puranas. Next in importance, number 2, next in importance to Indra comes Agni. First Indra, excuse me, then Agni. Agni was the personification of the sacrifice and fire. Sacrifices or yajanas occupied a prominent place in the early Vedic religion. Agni was thought of a messenger or a bearer of offerings from men to gods. Number 3, there are so many references to the cow and the bull in the Rig Vedic hymns. The cow constitutes the most important form of wealth of the Rig Vedic Aryans. So my students, cow was considered as the most important form of wealth of the Rig Vedic Aryans. One hymn in the Rig Veda refers out to the 4 orders of the society. The priest, the means Brahmins. The society was divided into 4 phases. It was mentioned in the Rig Veda. The first one is the priest, second the warriors, third the common people engaged in agriculture, trade and industry, the Vaishyas, and servants and workers, Shudras. This differentiation was based on occupation. The differentiation in the society was based on occupation, but the class division was not very sharp. The society was still liberal. It was based on the principle that all people were equal. So, after that, my students, the early Vedic society, the society was based on the family, then the position of the woman, very important, and number 3, the fourfold varna system. Okay, my students, today up till this, okay? Next day I will discuss the chapter, the early Vedic society. It is very important and you have to listen very carefully what I am teaching you, okay? Wish you all the best. See you in my next class, okay?